Welcome back. In this video, we're going to take care of the money. So therefore, we're going to create a new UI. Let's go ahead and create a new canvas here. And I'm going to call this one game UI. And now I'm going to change the UI scale mode to scale with screen, because I want to make sure that my game is going to scale with the screen. And here I'm going to use the reference resolution to be 1080p. Also, I'm going to set the match value to 50%, so I want it to match equally in terms of width and height. And then in the game window, I'm going to change the aspect ratio to 1080p portrait. So now our game will be in portrait mode. So inside of this game UI, I want to have a text. Okay, so let's go ahead and add a text. I'm going to call this one money text. And now this money text should say something like €0, for example. And I'm going to reposition it a little bit. So let's position it at the top left corner. I'm going to set it to 0. Let me also make sure that it overflows in both directions so that we can really see the text here, because otherwise this might not work correctly. So I'm going to set the font size to 100 so that it's going to be big. There you are, it says Euro because it's not positioned correctly. So let's make first of all sure that we are using a different color. I'm going to use a yellow color for this. And I'm also going to change the X position a little bit. So let me move it over a little bit to the right. So maybe something like 150, as well as the Y position. Let's move it down a notch. So maybe something like -30. Should be good. So now you see it doesn't look too good. We cannot see the text very well. So what you can change therefore is you can add an outline. So let me add an outline, and I'm going to set the effect distance to 5.5. So the outline will be black now, and I changed the effect distance to make it a little bigger. So the outline is wider, and now we can see this value a lot better. Okay, so that's a little trick if you want to make sure that you can really see a specific text very well. So now we have the money UI, and now I would like to go ahead and have a money manager in my game as well. So it's going to be similar to the game manager in terms of its functionality. So let's reset it. So this money manager should take care of all of the money. And I will need a script for that. So I created a new folder called scripts. So inside of the scripts folder, I'm going to create a new C# script. Let me call this one money manager. And let's open it up directly in Visual Studio. Okay, now we have the money manager script. And what I would like to set up here in the money manager is going to be, first of all, the text that I just used. Okay, so I want to set up the text to display whatever amount of money we have. Therefore, I'm going to use this time private and serialized field instead of public, as we've done in the last video. In some cases, this is a question of style. In some other cases, it's not. So if you want to make sure that the money UI text will not be accessible from anywhere else, then you can make it private, which is totally fine in this case. So only give as much visibility as required, but never more. So we used public in the last videos, but this is going to achieve the same thing for us in our cases. So we need to add Unity UI or Unity Engine UI for text to be usable. So now we need to talk about something called BigIntegers. So there is this problem with integers. So let me call this integer myInt, and let me give it a big number here. You can see now it's complaining because it says integral constant is too large. Okay, well, if it is a little bit too large, like so, then it's going to say cannot convert type long to int. So now it thinks that this number is a long number. Not in the sense that it is long, but it is of type long. And therefore, we would need to use the long keyword here. So this is just another data type, similar to doubles and floats. So the long just can hold longer numbers. Integers can hold the whole numbers, right? Long can just hold longer integer numbers, so to speak, or longer whole numbers. But then this is also limited, because now if I make the number even bigger, then you can see it's just too large. So we can change that by using something called a big integer. So there is this struct called BigInteger, and it allows us to store super long numbers, because the amount of money that we will have will be super long numbers potentially, right? Because it's an exponential kind of game. And in order to use this BigInteger, we need to add this namespace up here called numerics. So this BigInteger struct is inside of the numerics class or namespace. So I'm going to make it a property similar to the properties that we have used. For example, the money UI has a property called text. Okay, money UI.text. You see that this is the text property of the money UI text. And here, this money now will be the property of our money manager. So the money property of the money manager. So I'm making the get public, which means that any other class, any other script can get the money property, but they cannot set it. So only the money manager itself, so the class where the money property is created, is going to be able to set the value of the money property, which is fine because our money manager should also be the only one taking care of that. So this class will really just need to do three things. One thing is display on the UI how much money we have. Another thing is buy stuff. And the third one is to collect money. So let's first of all take care of updating the money UI. So I'm going to create a little private method that will just set the money UI text to be whatever amount of money we have. So we're using string format here because, well, it's a big integer and it's not an integer. So we're using this approach here where we are formatting an amount of something, whatever this value here is, euros. So this here says, give me the money. So if you were using curly brackets 1, then it would access a second property here. So if we had, let's say, a public int my num is 10, for example. So if I were to use my num here now, then it would say whatever amount of money we have, 10 euro. So that's what these curly brackets do. That's just a way of formatting strings. All right, so now we are formatting our string to display the text properly. That's good. So where do we call this update money UI? Well, I would say in the start method. So first of all, let's set the money to 0 at the beginning, and then let's call this update money UI so that it displays how much money we have. Later on, we will have to override this because we want to, of course, store how much money we have instead of setting it to 0 every time that we start the game. But for now, for testing, this will be fine. So now we need to have a method that will allow us to buy buildings. And if we buy something, we need to know the cost. So I'm going to create this method here, and I'm going to go over it because I believe at this point you are pretty familiar with C# code. So I can do it a little swifter here. So you see we're creating a public method called buy, which will return a boolean. So it will return if it worked or if it didn't work. So could we buy it or could we not buy it? And it will need the cost. And the cost will be given in the type of a big integer. So now I'm going to first of all set up a new boolean, which is going to be is buy OP successful, which means is the buy operation successful. And we're going to set that to false because we're assuming that by default it's not going to work. And we're going to return this is buy OP successful later on. So now it's our job to only set it to true if the purchase actually worked, and it will work if we have more money than the cost is to buy something. So if we have enough money to upgrade our building, then we're going to say it's fine. We're going to say this is buy operation successful was set to true, or we are going to set it to true. And we're going to subtract the cost that came with buying this building from the money or this upgrade. So if it is a building, then it's cool. If it is just an upgrade, it's cool as well. And once we updated the money, we also need to make sure that we update the UI about the new money, because otherwise the UI would never be updated. We would never see that there was a change in the UI or in the money. So we would still think we have the same amount of money even if we bought something, but internally that's not true and the money is going down, down, down. So it's like you are buying a bunch of stuff online, but your credit card never goes, well, it never reaches its limit, even though your bank account goes to minus 10 billion or so. Okay. So now another thing that this money manager will take care of is to actually add money, because we need to make sure that we can make money. And we're going to make money once the buildings have generated some money and we click on it in order to retrieve the money. So let's create a method for that. So this method will add money to our money manager. And it will also get the profit in terms of a big integer. So in the style of or format of a big integer. And we're going to first check, is the profit positive? Because for some reason it could be negative if something went wrong in our project or game or whatever. So we're making sure that the profit has to be positive, and then we're going to increase the profit or add the profit to our money. So this is going to be the amount of money that we have, and then as we are updating the money, we are also updating the UI. So that's always important here. All right, so now I want to do something else with this money manager, and that is to really take care of making sure that this money manager only exists once. Because if it exists more times than once, then we have a problem, because then potentially if we buy something, then the buy process would run twice and we would have a mix up of the money amount that we have and so forth. So how you can avoid that is by making sure that you make this a singleton. So we're going to create this static money manager instance, so that we have a static reference to our money manager, which means that there will be only one instance of that money manager in the entire project. And in order to really make sure that we set the instance correctly, we're going to do that in the start method. So here we're going to say whatever this money manager is, that should be the instance, the one instance that exists of this money manager. Okay, now let's save this script and let's go back to Unity, and let's make sure that we assign this money manager script to our money manager game object. So I'm going to drag it in here, and oh yeah, we don't need this my num, by the way. I'm also going to set the money UI over here like so. Okay, so money UI, money text, well, now let's go ahead and get rid of this my num like so, and let's save our script once again, because we really don't need this my num. This was just for demonstration purposes. Okay, so that's our game now. Let's see if our UI is displaying correctly. So this money text, there it is. So it is displaying correctly in our game mode. Let's run the game actually real quick to see if we broke anything, and it doesn't seem like it. So of course we cannot move around yet, we cannot buy anything even though there's the button. So we would potentially have to move the camera a little bit so that we currently focus on the main building that we have in our game here. So let me move around a little bit. So now we're focusing on this house. All right, so that's it for this video. See you in the next one. And by the way, save your scene.